Well, joining me live now is Ravi Agrawal, editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine. Thank you for your time. Now, before we get to each individual conflict, just broadly, what has Donald Trump said about how he views America's role in global conflicts?
I think Donald Trump sees America's role as, continuing to be the world's preeminent superpower, but, in a very transactional sense, less involved in other countries' problems. So he wants to look at the world not as a multilateral order where America is backstopping other countries and the order itself. He wants to see it as a world in which America gets the best deal with every single country that it has a relationship with. So more bilateral, less multilateral, less about the global order, more about how it serves American interests in a way that is demonstrably in favor of trade, for example, some of it through the prism of dodgy economics. Not all of it adds up, but that's the Trump way.
Well, so what does that tell us about the war in the Middle East? Because there is anger amongst some Americans over the way the Biden administration has supported Israel and has handled the war. What approach would you expect Donald Trump to take?
So you're right that the anger is justifiable. The Trump administration and Trump himself are much more likely to have even stronger ties to Israel than President Biden had. They are less likely to care about the humanitarian toll in Lebanon or Gaza. They are more likely to want to take a tougher line on Iran. So if you add all of that up, yes, Trump is going to say that he might push for an end to the war. He likes to see wars ending. He likes to play a role in ending wars. This taps into an American strain of thinking, of ending wars overseas and not being embroiled in conflicts. But when it comes to how and at what cost, no one has any idea what that means.
Yes, and you say it's justifiable. Of course, it's a complicated one, isn't it, when it comes to what tact, what method the U.S. should take. Now, do you expect him to take as hard a line when it comes to Iran, for example, whose proxies are so involved in this war? Because the dynamics have changed. Even Saudi Arabia and Iran get along better than they did in his first term.
That's right. A lot has changed on that front. Your viewers will remember that there was an Iran nuclear deal in place, the so-called JCPOA, that the Trump administration pulled out of in 2017. Some would argue that that has brought Iran closer to a nuclear bomb, but has also put in place tougher restrictions on that country. Now, Trump will say that what the answer now is more pressure on Iran. That's not entirely clear that that's what's going to happen. There are camps within Trump's group of advisors. There's a camp that thinks that this is a great moment with Tehran weakened to go and take out its nuclear facilities. There's another camp that feels that, again, getting embroiled in any sort of conflict abroad isn't helpful. Now, a lot in the coming weeks is going to depend on who Trump picks to be in his national security cabinet and how that sways his thinking in terms of what to do about Iran and therefore what to do in the Middle East.
And turning to Ukraine, of course, the other big war that makes headlines almost every day. He said he could end the war in 24 hours. Whether he can or not, do you expect it to involve any Ukrainian territory having to be conceded?
Almost certainly. I mean, I think the idea that he can end the war in 24 hours is bluster, which we've come to expect from him. I'll say this, the Ukrainians have not been very happy with the Biden administration. They think that Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, has slow-rolled aid and military supplies to Kyiv, and they feel that they've gotten just enough to survive, but not enough to win. Now, Putin, in a sense, has been waiting for November 5 to see which person he'll be dealing with in the White House after this conflict, after the election. So there is a change coming regardless of who would have won. But I think with Trump in power now and his ties to Putin, they've had several phone calls, not only in the past week, but in the past 4 years. The question now is what sort of a deal Trump will push for, how much he cares about what Ukraine loses, and how desperate he is to be able to say that he is the one who brought this conflict to a close. At what cost? Again, we're not entirely sure how much he's going to care. He has always said that he wants Europe to take a much bigger role in securing its borders, in, upping its defense spending to protect itself from Russia, and he wants America to demonstrably do less. I think that's certainly going to be a theme that he will push, and that may also then determine how Ukraine approaches any sort of peace negotiations and how Putin does.
And you said that Donald Trump will be focused on U.S. interests. He's made a lot of promises when it comes to tariffs, for example. Do you think China will be as much of a priority this time around?
I think it will. I think he's done a lot of the things he wanted to do in terms of reorienting American foreign policy to be much tougher on China. The Biden administration did not remove most of the Trump tariffs on China. I think Trump likes that. But he has mooted much tougher tariffs on China, going anywhere from 50 to 60%, up to 200% on electric vehicles. The truth is, we just don't know how any of that is going to play out. Some of it may depend, again, on who is in his national security cabinet.
Well, Ravi, apologies to interrupt, but just to your point about the electric cars, what kind of influence do you think Elon Musk might have on those issues?
That's a great question. And again, the fact that he has been with Trump on the phone with President Zelensky recently, with the Taiwanese as well, it tells you that he's certainly going to have an influence. To what degree, we don't know. How that changes policymaking on electric vehicles, we don't know. The United States had already been subsidizing the American EV market and, being protectionist on the Chinese EV market. You can expect that trend line to continue. To what degree, we don't know.
Right.
There's also Taiwan here, where Trump, again, in his very nakedly transactional way, has said, what's in it for us? What are we getting out of backstopping Taiwan and protecting it from China?
Ravi, that's definitely something to watch. Ravi Agrawal, editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine, thank you so much. Stay with us here on BBC News.